But that said, the other thing that I did notice that was particularly odd is a lot of women were saying that, they liked everything except the part where bills are being paid. And it's like, oh no, I'm okay with everything, just don't ask me to pay bills. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, okay, maybe it's just me, but...
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who might find it hard to breathe if you've got that asthma. He is also a man who definitely added running his mouth to his cardio routine. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B, and I am here to talk about women going through it. Actually, no. This one isn't even about the women. I'm just flipping the scripts on this episode. Like, stuff is just coming out differently. I'm not on the side where I want it to be. On one end, on the other end, I'm busy talking about changing things up and, switching sides. Like, it sounds like it's not even me. At least that's what I think it's gonna sound like, because I'm about to suggest a bunch of things that would make the average feminist blush and would piss off some men entirely. But I'm doing it for particularly good reasons. And I'm hoping that by the time you listen all the way till the end of the main topic, you'll probably be on my side, because I feel like it's something that is gonna happen sooner or later. So it's better if we plan for when it happens, not if it happens. But all in all, it's not like it's like a doomsday clock or anything. So I hope you listen all the way till the end. And should you like what you're listening to, should you not like it, should you have a different form of feedback, or should you want to suggest a potential topic or a potential guest for me to interview on the podcast, then you can hit me up via the social media links, which are usually in the description. My DMs are always open. And should you feel like not really going all the way and doing all of that just to get to me, then listen all the way till the end, because I usually drop the social media links there at the end as well. So you don't have to read it, you can just hear it. But all that said and done, a massive thank you to you that's listening, and I do hope that you listen to the end, like I said earlier before. And I should definitely get to where the switching sides is from. But before I can get to that one, I want to start from a place where I feel like it's a little bit familiar, yet highly unfamiliar, but it's something that I felt needed to be talked about. Especially considering that people sometimes make it seem as though I'll always choose the man's side, and I am very biased towards women because I am a guy and I will speak up for guys. Now, the R&B artist known as Brian McKnight, who is infamously known for a couple of classic R&B hits like Start at One, or should I say Back at One, was recently on an interview on Anton Daniels' YouTube channel. Anton Daniels is a YouTuber from the States, and he was talking about how he apparently was never in love with his ex-wife that he had from 1990 to 2003, and the sons that they have together weren't made from love. Now, that seems like a particularly weird thing for someone to say, more so a father. Now, to give a little bit of context, Brian and Julie McKnight, I believe the both of them are called, were married from the year 1990 to 2003. They have two sons, Brian Jr. and the late Nico, who lost his battle with colon cancer somewhere around 2025. Now, Julie, who is the ex-wife of Brian McKnight, was alleging that he was an abusive husband and a neglectful father to their children. And in response, Brian McKnight ended up suing her for defamation, and it's a case that, as of the time of this recording, is still in court. Now, Brian McKnight said a couple of interesting things in regards to this entire thing. Now, this isn't the entire podcast. The entire podcast, or at least the entire episode where he speaks on this, is round about almost 2 hours long, and it's on Anton Daniels' YouTube page, so you can go look for that. What I do have is a clip that he just so happened to have posted on IG. And I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't paint a particularly good picture. But before I can say anything more, let me just let the clip play. So without further ado,
our two families are two prominent families in the Black Adventist Church. We both met at the college where I was going. She came, okay. I was a sophomore, she was a freshman. We kind of started dating. The next year she gets pregnant. This is back when shame was a real thing.
I know, yep, I get it.
She's back home, she tells me she's pregnant and that she's going to get an abortion. Because I'm like, yeah, we should probably do that. You're 18, I'm 20. Why would we? I'm just about to start this whole thing. Maybe this is the route we need to go. And she agrees. I'm like, oh, dodged a bullet. I'm going out to sign my deal in California. When I leave there and get back to Huntsville, that's when she called me and said, actually, I didn't have the abortion. So now I'm like, I got to tell my mom. My mother, who played the piano and was singing in the choir every week. In the Seventh-day Adventist Church, if your kid has a baby out of wedlock, you no longer can hold any church office. You can't sing up in front. You can't do it. You are held responsible for whatever the kids do. I honored my mother, and I tried to do the right thing with a woman that I hadn't even known a year yet. We got married in September, baby in November. We had sort of an agreement. You handle this part. I'm not changing diapers. I'm 20 years old. This was not what I expected to do. You made this decision. You're going to handle that, and I'm going to handle this.
Yeah.
When you make that bargain, you say, hey, you're going to take care of this. This is your responsibility. And they say, got it. And you go and you do what you have to do. You're expecting that to be the case. But we don't realize is that people will tell you whatever it is they want to tell you to keep you there until that first argument. Then the real thing starts to come out. But by then, you're looking at your life. You're like, well, and I had this conversation with my mother, like, why did you have me do this? You tried this. It didn't work. Now you got me doing it.
Right.
It was tough, but I'm already in it. We separated 4 times before we ended up getting divorced ultimately anyway.
How far into the marriage would you say the first separation?
2 years.
Because you were married for what, 13 years?
Yeah, 13.
So why not just break off? Why stick it out for 13 years?
For the kids. I was never in love with their mother. I wasn't. They weren't made from love to begin with. And I said this before, and people got so mad, this obligation that just because you lay with somebody now, it's sort of an 18-year sentence of some kind, or beyond that, because it's forever. There's resentment there. But at the same time, you do have these children, and you want to try to do your best to do right by them. If we were never supposed to be together like this in the first place, but we have these children, we both have to do what's right for them. And you're right. What we should have done was just separated for good then.
What's that nail in the coffin that then leads both of you to come to the conclusion that you guys are no longer good together, regardless of whether or not you have kids or not?
I think we always knew we weren't that. She may have been lying to herself if she thought otherwise. For me, when I realized I could parent those boys without her, I could be a good parent. I could be there for them, and I could give them what they needed from me without being married to their mother.
Do you think that the kids were the thing that kept y'all together as long as you were?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the entire comment section, or at least most of it that I could see when I was scrolling through the comments on this clip, weren't particularly positive towards the guy. And I'm not gonna lie, it's not like whatever the guy said within the context of this video is particularly positive for the most part. But all that aside, like, for me, when I listened to this clip, when I kind of watched it, because it was more listening than watching, I had a couple of issues with what the guy said. Now, the whole thing of like, oh, if you're in the Seventh-day Adventist Church and your child has, gets pregnant or has a child out of wedlock, you can't hold any church like office, role, or position or something. Like, when I heard that, I don't know, I felt like it was a big pile of merd, because I've been a part of the SDA church basically all my life, and I have never heard of such a thing being a thing. Now, granted, much as I am SDA born and raised, like, there's definitely a lot about the SDA church that I really don't know. So maybe I could be wrong about it. But last I checked, even like from my time in the SDA church, like as much time as I've spent there, the most that I've seen happen, if like, for example, your child gets a kid out of wedlock, is like they'll mostly end up being ostracized for the most part, in that whatever friends they have from church may stop talking to them, may kind of distance themselves from them, and people might give you like a bad look here and there. And more often than not, whenever I see that happen, I usually see those people, or those kids, if you want to call them that, kind of disappear away from church for a bit, and then they come back after the baby's already born. So that way it's like, fine, yes, they didn't have to go through like the issues of dealing with a visible baby bump, and people can focus on how cute the baby is instead of the fact that you produced a kid out of wedlock. So like, usually that's kind of how I've seen it. But also at the same time, considering that I've been an SD at a relatively different time than this guy was when he got his babe pregnant, maybe they softened the rules, or at least maybe it wasn't as harsh. Even though I feel like still, like, considering that I'm an African in Africa, like there's a lot of culture and, culture, tradition, conservatism kind of falls on the same line. I'd have thought that they'd have probably stuck to that. But anyways, maybe it was something that was very particular to that time when the mother was a Seventh-day Adventist. And considering that the Seventh-day Adventist Church is a conservative church, or at least a conservative group, they tend to be very, very strict about rules, especially the ones that may give a bad look on the church's image. Like, that's generally how I've seen a lot of it. So maybe there might be some truth there. I don't entirely think so, but I could be wrong on that one. But that said, I had two main issues with it. First, dude is busy talking about how it wasn't planned and he got married to her and they had nothing but issues and they separated 3 times before they divorced in the 13-year union and everything. But the thing that I find particularly interesting is they had 2 kids. Like, I can get saying that it was a mistake, it wasn't something that you wanted, and you got kid number 1, but I don't know, maybe it's just the fact that, I'm from the outside looking in, but why the fuck did you have the second one? Like, having the first one is already, enough of a problem. Maybe you can say that wasn't, properly planned out and everything, and, it just happened. But you're already married to this person, you're already having issues. You choose to have a second kid, and then you come back and you're like, oh, like we didn't plan for it. My guy, having that second kid, like that one seems like it was entirely planned. And then after that, coming back and saying that they weren't made from love. Okay, fine. Let's assume that, the second kid was one of those ones where like people around you are like, oh, maybe if you guys have another kid, it'll bring the 2 of you together. Maybe it could be one of those things, okay? But coming back and saying that they weren't made from love, if I was the remaining kid, like I'd feel like that is a proper gut punch, because on one end, it's just saying that you weren't made from love. On the other end, this is Brian McKnight. This man has made classic R&B hits that are basically historical. This man has spoken about love, and now you're telling me that there was more love in his songs than in his kids? Like, do you know how wild of a situation that is? Like, this man has basically made his money off of doing songs on love, and then he comes and says that the kids weren't made from love. Honestly, I would leave that piece out. I would leave it out if I was explaining a bunch of that shit, because it just makes him look so bad. From a PR perspective, it makes him look bad. From a fatherhood perspective, it makes him look bad. Granted, maybe he was just saying his piece and all, but honestly, like, I can get the whole, you were almost trapped into a marriage that you didn't entirely sign up for and you were kind of forced into doing, and I can get him feeling some type of way about it. But getting to a point where you're saying that the kids weren't made from love, that is cold and it is just brutal. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of that. I know there's a lot of people that listen to this and they're like, you know what, I'm done listening to this guy's songs, blah blah blah. Am I really done listening to his songs? I wouldn't say so. Mainly because I listen to like one of his songs for the most part, and I do it like maybe at best once or twice a month. So I don't really think it's really gonna change much. But anyways, I could be wrong about this. Either way, I will leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode. Now, we've always kind of looked at the whole idea of the modern family as the man that is successful or is doing pretty well for himself goes, gets a beautiful babe, and they get together. They, choose to have a union, or should I say a partnership of some sort. They get married and, they have a couple of kids. Dude brings his finances, stability, and a bunch of leadership to the household, and the woman kind of brings this whole like support and this nurturing side, as well as being supportive and submissive and everything. And usually that's kind of the ideal that people are kind of fed out here. Like, that's basically the ideal that most people have been taught and shown and conditioned to expect and see. But now there's a situation that may be coming up that might actually be forcing us to rethink this entire thing. And for me to explain this, I need to bring up an example that was brought up by a dating coach who on IG refers to herself as Rise with Roxy, who was speaking about the fact that Venus Williams recently married a male model who is worth 100 times less than her and is even younger than her. So I am going to let the clip play, then I can give my thoughts on it, because I do believe that there is quite a bit to unpack here. So without further ado...
So, Venus Williams married an Italian model this past weekend. Venus is worth $100 million. He's only worth about $1 million from his modeling and acting career. She's literally 100 times richer than him. Not only that, she's 45 and also 8 years older than him. And get this, he has had a history of dating older, richer women, like actress Claudia Gerini, 16 years older than him. As a love coach, here's my take. Venus got to her mid-40s, she got sick and tired of being single, and spotted a male model at a fashion show. She was hot for him, so she went for it. She dated like a successful guy would. She wanted some fun. And for him, Venus was the most successful girl he could ever land. So he proposed in 6 months of dating before she could get away. They were married within a year. She said yes because he is easy on the eyes and willing to serve a queen. Plus, she was diagnosed with adenomyoma and needed a baby daddy while she's still fertile. This cougar dynamic could totally work. He's her arm candy, her bodyguard, her driver, her assistant, all in one. He makes her life easier. What this tells you is if you're already super successful, making more than 90% of the male population, then don't go chasing older, richer men. Because a wealthy guy is a full-time job, and you cannot compete with these girls who are young, perky, and ruthless. You're simply too busy to cater to a guy. So what you should do is to date like a rich guy. Go for someone who you're hot for and have some fun. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, I want intellectual compatibility. I want a guy who can teach me something and actually elevate my life and my career. In that case, you're still having the Cinderella mentality where you're waiting for someone to save you. But do know that a lot of these successful men are full of temper and ego, and you as the queen probably can't tolerate it. You're too successful to put up with a lot of his nonsense. That's why the cougar dynamic works. We've seen this over and over again with celebrities like Kris Jenner and Corey Gamble. There's a 25-year age gap between the two, but they've been dating for 10 years. So be the cougar. Just go for a handsome guy who can put his male ego aside and serve you. And as the boss in the relationship, you might have to pay the bills, but you'll be happier in life in general, and it'll help boost your career.
Okay. Particularly interesting clip. I know it's not particularly common to hear of such stories, but I love the fact that it was brought up. It's one of the more interesting dynamics that you rarely ever hear about, where it's like the roles have been switched and it's the woman who's like the main breadwinner and it's the guy that kind of looks like the trophy partner in this case. Like this was a particularly interesting scenario, which was even more interesting when I decided to look at the comments, because usually the same exact things that women will look at guys very funnily for saying were basically the same things that women were saying in the comments, which was, I hope she has a prenup. Like, it was so interesting. Like, women will kind of express how they may not want a guy to have a prenup, blah blah blah, like, oh, you know, like, take him for everything he's got in a divorce and everything. But suddenly when it's the woman that's richer, it's like, oh yeah, make sure you get a prenup, make sure you have a prenup before you get married to a guy that makes less than you. Like, it's so interesting whenever those roles are reversed. It's like, oh yeah, definitely a prenup. But that said, the other thing that I did notice that was particularly odd is a lot of women were saying that, you know, they liked everything except the part where bills are being paid. And it's like, oh no, I'm okay with everything, just don't ask me to pay bills. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, okay, maybe it's just me, but what's this thing with women and being allergic to paying bills? The wildest part here is you're looking at a woman who is making significantly, like significant in every sense of the word, significantly more than her guy, and your problem is paying the bills. Like, she has a company and people that sort that shit out. Like, it's not like she pulls money out of her purse to pay for shit. I don't even think she pulls her card out. There's probably an assistant that basically just asks for the receipt, sorts it out, or probably sends it to like the company invoice, or maybe the company card is used while she's busy having fun. Like, why is it that people suddenly started catching a feeling, and by people I mean women, the moment the bills part came up? Like, that shit was actually wild to me when I was seeing it in the comments. But anyways, comments aside, at least for now, whether we would agree with it or not, I feel like this might actually be a possible reality for a lot of people in the very near future. And I know there's some people that are like, oh, such a thing would never happen, blah blah blah. Well, unfortunately, from what I'm seeing, at least as far as stats go, there's a very high possibility of such a thing happening. Let me explain. We are at a point in time where there are more women that are becoming even more educated than possible, And as a result of that, the earning potential is higher. All right, that's the theory side. On the flip side, men aren't getting as educated as they used to. Like, there's a lot more guys that are dropping out of school. There's a lot more guys that aren't pursuing further education. And I've spoken about this a couple of different times on this podcast. So in essence, from a theory perspective, there's a pretty high likelihood that there's going to be a lot more women that are making a lot more money in the very possible, and even in the current state that we are in, it is actually something that is happening. So it's not just theory. As of right now, at least, at this point in time in the world that we live in, we have more women that are making more money than ever before. Mainly because a lot more of them are getting into higher tier positions. A lot of them are pretty much educated. Certain areas have gender quotas, especially when it comes to stuff like leadership and like board seats and shit. So there's a lot of women that are starting to make way more bank than ever before. So it means that there are more women that are making good money. It's not like the number of guys that are making good money is increasing at the same rate. If there's fewer guys that are pursuing further education, it means that that's fewer people that may have the earning potential to match whatever it is that is happening on the other side, at least when you compare it from an education to earnings perspective. So if anything, there's going to be way more women that are making really good money, if not a lot more money than the men, and should they want to date, there's a very good possibility that they may end up dating a guy that makes less or that is doing worse than they are, because the more you go up, the fewer the guys that are there. And interestingly enough, the higher you go, the more you find that a lot of those guys are usually already married. So they're going to have a lot fewer options, the women, and as such, they may have to decide to date down. So this is a possibility that is very much there. And with this possibility, therein lies a particularly interesting issue that we don't usually discuss quite a bit. And that is the role of the supporter or the supportive partner in relationships. Usually we talk about how, the man is supposed to be dominant, the woman is supposed to be submissive. That's the masculine and feminine sides to things. Like, we've had these debates on like masculine, feminine energy and dominant, submissive energy for the longest time, but people rarely ever talk about the supporter role, or at least the supportive partner role, which is something that will switch from side to side. Okay. Normally, most times you'll hear that it is coming from the woman's side. The woman ends up being the more supportive partner because the guy is probably chasing a dream and he became successful. And it's particularly why you'll hear like a lot of times people saying, behind every successful man, there's a woman, blah, blah, blah. Usually they'll just throw in a couple of words there. So this is something that we've normally seen come more from the woman's side, but it is something that also does come from the man's side. There are times when the man is the more supportive partner. You will hear this a lot when like a man or like the husband decides to support their wife who decides to go into school or to go back to school, and they'll support them in whichever way, whether it's paying school fees, whether it's ensuring that like the house is taken care of or something of the sort, just so that the wife can go to school and get her papers and do particularly well. You don't hear this a lot, and I guess on one end maybe it's because it doesn't happen a lot, but also at the same time we've also heard of cases where like you help the woman and then she drops you for a guy that's doing way better than you. But that's a different problem for a different time. So essentially the role of the supportive partner is something that has always been up for grabs. And in a particular case like this, maybe, just maybe, if you're not going to support her financially, then maybe you can support her on a moral level. The whole, clap for people until your turn arrives. And in a sense, you just help out in the best way you can, wherever you can. So if that's at home, ensuring that stuff is taken care of so that she doesn't have to worry about that when she comes home, you do that. If it's a case of like you trying to help out with work and stuff, if need be, like, you just try and fulfill your part. Because at the end of the day, if the two of you support each other and you're a team and you have a high performing partner or a partner that is aiming very high and needs to be at the absolute best, the best chance they have is if they are being supported fully by someone else. And for you as the man, much as it's not something you might be used to, that might be where your usefulness actually pops up from. Because if she's making way more than you, then you may need to find a new way to be useful in her life. And this is one way to kind of look at it. So maybe, just maybe, you should at least try and consider such a thing. Although, with that said, I will admit that even though this is something that I am suggesting that some people may have to come to terms with, you kind of have to look at the setbacks that'll come with it. Because people came into feminism and they're like, equal rights for women, let's make sure that, they can excel and do way better than some of the guys out here. And I don't think they looked at the cons. And in this case, I'm gonna try and get ahead of that by looking at the cons of such a thing. Because we have seen examples of this, we have seen some of our parents going through this, and as such, we do have some idea of what can happen if such a situation occurs, which can actually create a couple of massive setbacks. And from my end, I picked out 3 main setbacks that can affect a relationship that functions like this. And the first one is the issue of dominance, or at least a dominance hierarchy in the relationship. Not necessarily a hierarchy, but essentially who is considered the dominant partner. Now, you find that whenever people start handling the bills, they usually like to take a certain level of dominance. And whenever women usually do that, it's like now they want to seem a little bit more dominant or act a little bit more dominant because apparently they're the ones that pay the bills. And while I do have issues with this is something that does happen with a lot of people. And in as much as there's a woman that'll be like, oh no, I wouldn't mind such a thing, I wouldn't do that. The problem is that I don't think most women usually realize just how bad this can get and how much of a slippery slope it can be, because it just starts from small bits of disrespect, and it usually starts to pack up, because it gets to a point where you're basically asserting dominance by being disrespectful to the man because you're sorting out bills. And usually that lack of respect is usually the place where stuff starts to break down. Then there's the issue of ego. And this one usually comes around about the same time when this whole issue of like being the more dominant partner kind of comes in, because it's like now you're dealing with a partner that may be more agreeable even though they're expected to be the dominant force in the relationship. But as that's happening, one, you're not backing down from any arguments and this guy will take it. And as that's happening, even though you know you're wrong, you're doubling down, because guess what a lot of babes tend to do whenever it comes to arguments? Exactly what I'm saying. They double down, and then, just to justify it to yourself, you're like, well, yeah, but I'm the one who pays the bills, so I probably know a hell of a lot more, or because I'm the one that's paying the bills, he should be listening to me. And something like that usually starts to break down a lot of relationships. And hoping that such a thing doesn't happen, and let's even assume that both parties are good to each other, there's lots of respect on the board and everything, and they treat each other pretty well. The biggest issue that comes after that is the societal issues or societal pressure, where the society isn't used to seeing a dynamic like this, and as such, how they will usually react is to put pressure on both sides by attacking from each angle. In that you find that if it's on the man's side, you'll find that fellow peers may disrespect the man and say that he's being kept by a woman and he's not a real man for doing that, and that might turn him to a point where he has to try and assert even more dominance, which is how some of these men tend to become a little bit more abusive. Or it can be from the women's side, where other women are like, oh, why are you with a man who can't take care of you? You need to be with someone that, is on your level. You shouldn't be stooping down to that degree. Oh, what kind of a man is he? And those bits of disrespect are the ones that can fuel the ego that can lead to more disrespect in the household. And if either side ends up caving into that pressure, what happens is it can either kick off whatever other issues I had mentioned earlier, or it just causes an issue of disrespect on both ends, which can eventually lead to the end of the relationship. And so, in a sense, there are pretty massive setbacks here, even though I have mentioned them in as simple of a way as possible. And this is the point where I would want to at least try and come in with a fix, because even though there's cons, I do believe that we can kind of figure our way through this. So, in my opinion, I feel like the biggest fix that we could have is you can have the woman understand that, she can be dominant and aggressive outside, but the moment she checks into the house, she's submissive to her man. The moment she's with her man anywhere, she recognizes that she's supposed to be a submissive partner, and she kind of leaves it at that. no disrespect because you're the one paying the bills. And if we can bring back the cultural teaching on how to respect a man from back in the day, that would be highly appreciated. But all in all, I feel like those options would kind of make things pretty good. On the man's side, I would encourage the man to come to terms with the fact that he will not be the only breadwinner, and to accept that sometimes it's good to uplift your partner and be the supportive one. You don't have to be the one at the front all the time, and being a supportive partner is a good thing. And also you need to find value in yourself and value in your dominance beyond being the person that pays the most bills. But all in all, what I am trying to say in conclusion is, given women's success, we may have to embrace the possible reality of this thing happening. So if we cannot take it in stride, if we cannot prepare ourselves for a possibility of this, then we may have a lot more issues in the future as far as being single, or at least a relationship recession, is concerned. And with all of that said, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, and I'm too young to understand masculinity or men, but either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. On X, it is at Bagaka the D. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.